She was 3 sips into a boring date, trying desperately to pretend she was human. She had the disguise, the job, and the fake smile. But when the Alpha King walked into the bar, he didn't smell the lie. He smelled the challenge. And in front of a room full of witnesses, he didn't ask for her name, he threw her over his shoulder and started a war. Chapter 1. The music wasn't just loud. It was physical violence against her ears. Bass vibrated through the sticky floorboards and rattled Rynna's teeth. It felt like a hammer hitting a bruise over and over again. She wanted to snarl. She wanted to rip the speakers off the wall. Instead, she smiled at the man across the table. His name was Dave. Or maybe Dan. It didn't matter. He was safe. He smelled like fabric softener and anxiety. Even so, she forced herself to nod as he talked about his spreadsheets. So I told my boss that the data entry doesn't match the quarterly projection. Rynna took a sip of her wine. It tasted like vinegar and regret. She hated wine. Her tongue craved something richer, something with iron in it. But humans drank wine on dates, and she was a human. That was the lie she lived inside. In fact, she had become an expert at lying. She crossed her legs under the table. Her skin felt too tight. It was a constant itch. The wolf inside her was pacing back and forth, scratching at the back of her ribs. It hated the noise. It hated the smell of cheap cologne and sweat that filled the bar. "Are you listening?" Dave asked. "Of course," Rynna lied smoothly. Data entry, projections, fascinating. She didn't know what scared her more. The fact that she was bored to tears, or the fact that she could snap his neck before he blinked. Because of that, she kept her hands folded on her lap. If she put them on the table, she might claw through the wood. She was 26 years old. She had run away from the pack politics 3 years ago. No more bowing, no more scent marking, just beige walls and polite conversations. Despite that, the wolf growled low in her chest. Quiet, she thought. Be normal. Just then, a waiter bumped into her chair. Her body moved on instinct. Her head snapped around. Her lip curled back to bare teeth that weren't quite sharp enough to kill, but looked dangerous anyway. A low vibration started in her throat. The waiter froze. He blinked. "Sorry, miss." Rynna swallowed the growl. She forced her face back into a mask of polite indifference. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. That was close. Too close. "It's fine," she said. Her voice was a little too rough. Dave laughed nervously. "You looked intense there for a second. Like you were going to bite him." She froze. "I'm just tired," she said. Maybe it was fate testing her. Or maybe she was just bad at this. She looked at the clock on the wall. 20 more minutes. She just had to survive 20 more minutes of being human. Then she could go home, lock the door, and eat a raw steak in the dark. "So," Dave said, leaning in, "do you want another drink?" "No," she said quickly. "I'm good." She looked around the room. Humans were laughing. They were oblivious. They didn't smell the blood pumping in each other's veins. They were lucky. They were free. And she let it happen. She let herself relax just a fraction. The danger had passed. She was anonymous. Just a girl in a black dress on a bad date. Nobody knew what she was. Nobody was hunting her. But then, the air pressure in the room dropped. It wasn't a sound. It was a physical weight. The hair on her arms stood up. Her wolf stopped pacing and froze. It went dead silent inside her head. "Wait." She stopped breathing. Without warning, the door to the bar opened behind her.
The city was a headache that never went away. Torvak stepped out of the black sedan. The pavement was wet with rain. The streetlights reflected on the puddles like spilled oil. He adjusted his cufflinks. He didn't want to be here. He had a meeting with the council in an hour. He just wanted a shortcut through the district. Yet, the noise of the city clawed at him. He could hear everything. The heartbeat of the driver waiting in the car. The argument happening 3 blocks away. The scurry of rats in the alley. It was the burden of the alpha, the pack mind. It was a constant roar of voices and needs and fears. He rubbed his temples. "Wait here," he told the driver. He needed a drink, something strong enough to burn the noise out of his head. He walked toward the bar on the corner. It looked dirty. It looked crowded. Perfect. He could disappear in the crowd. Nobody would look at him. Or so he thought. He was the king. He was the apex predator in a city of monsters. When he walked, the world tilted. He felt the shift in the air as he approached the door. Lesser wolves nearby, the ones hiding in human skin, went silent. They could feel his gravity. He didn't care. He reached for the door handle. But then, it hit him. The scent. It wasn't the smell of fear. He was used to that. It wasn't the cloying sweetness of a female in heat trying to get his attention. It was ozone, wild citrus, rain on hot asphalt, and underneath it all, defiance. Torvak froze. His hand hovered over the brass handle. His nostrils flared. He inhaled deeply, tasting the air. It was a wolf, a female, but she didn't smell like a pack wolf. She didn't smell like a rogue either. She smelled like a wall of iron, controlled, deliberate, as if summoned. His wolf woke up. It had been sleeping, a cold, dark beast in the back of his mind. But now it opened its golden eyes. It wanted to find the source. It wanted to hunt. "Who dares?" his wolf snarled. "Who dares to smell like that in my city?" Not only that, but she was hiding. She was inside this human bar, pretending to be sheep. Torvak lowered his hand. His eyes darkened. The gold bled into his irises, swallowing the human color. A low growl rumbled in his chest, vibrating through his ribs. He wasn't thirsty anymore. As a result, his plans changed. The meeting could wait. The council could wait. He pushed the door open. The noise inside was deafening. Bad music, screaming humans, the smell of stale beer and lust. But he didn't notice any of it. He was a shark entering the water. He locked onto the scent thread. It was thick and bright, pulling him through the dark. He saw the back of her head, dark hair, rigid posture. She was sitting with a human male, a weak, bland, human male. The insult burned through him. She was sharing space with prey. She was pretending she wasn't a predator. To make things worse, she didn't turn around. She knew he was there. He could see the tension in her shoulders. She felt him. Any other wolf would be on their knees by now, baring their neck in submission. But she sat there, sipping her drink, ignoring the king. His lips quirked up in a smile that wasn't nice. It was dangerous. At the same time, his blood began to boil. She thought she could ignore him. She thought she could play human in his territory and he wouldn't notice. He stepped into the room.
Silence spread through the room like a cold plague. It started at the door and rippled outward. The music was still playing, but it sounded distant now. The humans didn't notice the shift. They kept shouting and laughing. But the wolves... Oh, the wolves knew. Rynna felt 3 shifters at the bar stop breathing. She felt the bouncer near the door lower his head in instinctive submission. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. Her hands were gripping her wine glass so hard she thought it might shatter. Shards of glass in her palm would be easier to deal with than this. "Don't look," she told herself. "If you don't look, he might leave." "Rynna?" Dave asked. He frowned. "You're pale. Are you okay?" She couldn't speak. Her throat was closed shut. Her heart was beating a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Thump, thump, thump. It was too loud. Surely he could hear it from across the room. Because of that, she focused on Dave's tie. It was blue, hideous blue. Focus on the blue. But she could feel him moving. He wasn't walking. He was stalking. He moved with a heavy, fluid grace. He was getting closer. The air grew heavier with every step he took. It felt like standing next to a nuclear reactor. The power rolling off him made her skin prickle. King Torvak, the alpha of alphas. The one wolf she had sworn to avoid. Without another word, she picked up her glass and downed the rest of the wine. She needed the courage. She needed to dull the edge of her panic. "I think we should go," she said. Her voice sounded thin. "Go?" Dave looked confused. "We just got here. I haven't even told you about the quarterly reports for—" "Now," Rynna snapped. She started to stand up. As if pulled by a string, she froze. He was there. She didn't have to see him to know it. The heat of his body radiated against her back. He was standing right behind her chair. He was so close she could smell him, cedar and blood and rain. It was a dark, overwhelming scent that made her knees weak. Her wolf whined. It wanted to roll over. It wanted to bare its throat. "No," Rynna thought fiercely. "I am not a subject. I am free." She forced herself to stay seated. She forced herself to pick up her fork. Her hand was trembling. "Is this a friend of yours?" Dave asked, looking up. His eyes went wide. Rynna didn't answer. She stared at the table. The silence roared in her ears. Then, a hand came into view. A large, tanned hand with scars on the knuckles. It rested on the empty chair beside her. He leaned down. His face was near her ear. She could feel his breath, hot and steady against her neck. "You're in my seat," he said. His voice was low, gravel and velvet. It wasn't a question. It was a command wrapped in a whisper. Dave looked between them. He looked at the massive man standing over them and then at Rynna. He swallowed hard. "Excuse me, buddy, but we're on a date." Rynna closed her eyes. "Oh God, Dave." "Shut up." Torvak didn't look at Dave. He only had eyes for the back of Rynna's neck. "The date is over," Torvak said. Rynna turned. She couldn't hide anymore. She spun in her chair and looked up. The moment their eyes locked, the world stopped. His eyes were gold, burning, churning gold. There was no humanity in them, only the wolf. He looked at her like he had found something he had lost a long time ago, and he looked furious. "I'm not going anywhere," Rynna said. She kept her voice steady, even though she was terrified. Torvak smiled. It was a terrifying sight. "We'll see about that," he said.
The human man spoke again. "Look, buddy, I don't know who you think you are, but—" Torvak didn't let him finish. He didn't growl. He didn't shout. Instead, he simply turned his head and looked at the man. He let the mask slip, just a fraction. He let the predator surface in his eyes. It was a look that said, "I will eat you, and I will not even remember the taste." The human Dave went pale. His mouth snapped shut with an audible click. In that moment, the air in the bar seemed to vanish. Torvak looked back at the woman. Rynna. She was still glaring at him. Her chin was up. Her eyes were defiant. She looked beautiful. She looked like a queen sitting in a pigsty. "Leave," Torvak said to the human. Dave didn't argue. Not only that, but he scrambled backward so fast his chair tipped over. He didn't look back at Rynna. He just ran. He ran because his instincts were smarter than his brain. "Coward," Rynna muttered. She looked at Torvak. "I wasn't finished with him." "You were finished the moment you walked in here," Torvak said. He reached for her. Before she could move, he had her arm. His grip wasn't painful, but it was absolute. It was the grip of a man who held the world in his hands and knew exactly how much pressure to apply before it cracked. "Get off me," she hissed. She tried to pull away. She dug her heels into the floor. She used her wolf strength. It was impressive. Against a human, she would have broken bones. But Torvak wasn't human. To make things worse, the bar was watching. He could feel their eyes. Every hidden wolf. Every shifter. They were waiting to see if the king was weak. They were waiting to see if he would negotiate. Kings do not negotiate. So he didn't. Without warning, he stepped in close. He bent down, and in one smooth motion, he swept her off her feet. The world tilted for her. He felt her gasp against his back as he threw her over his shoulder like a sack of grain. It was primitive. It was rude. It was necessary. "Put me down," she yelled. She started pounding on his back. Her fists were hard little hammers. She kicked her legs. "You arrogant, overgrown carpet. Put me down right now." He ignored her. He started walking toward the door. What followed was a path of silence. The music had stopped. The humans were staring with their mouths open. Glass crunched under his boots. He walked with a steady rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. "You are making a scene," she hissed near his ear. "You made the scene," he replied calmly. "I am just finishing it." He didn't care about the humans. He didn't care about the whispers. All he cared about was the weight of her. She felt solid. She felt right. Even so, she didn't stop fighting. She bit his shoulder. His wolf purred. Finally, it thought. A fight. He pushed through the doors and into the cool night air. The rain was still falling. It soaked his shirt instantly. It slicked her hair against his neck. "If you don't put me down, I will scream," she threatened. "You are already screaming," he pointed out. He walked to the black sedan. The driver, a young wolf named Kale, jumped out to open the back door. Kale looked terrified. He kept his eyes on the ground, terrified to look at the furious woman draped over his alpha. Torvak leaned down. "In," he ordered. "No," she said. He didn't ask again. He shifted his weight and tossed her onto the leather seats. She landed with a bounce. She immediately scrambled to the other side, her eyes blazing. He slid in after her and pulled the door shut. The lock clicked. A heavy, final sound. Now, they were alone.
The car smelled like him. It was suffocating. It was cedar and rain and pure, raw power. It filled her nose and coated her tongue. Rynna pressed herself against the door. She wanted to shift. She wanted to explode into fur and claws and tear the leather seats apart. But she couldn't. Not here. Not with him sitting 2 feet away, looking like he owned the oxygen she was breathing. "You kidnapped me," she said. Her voice was shaking, not from fear, but from rage. "I rescued you," he corrected. He sat, relaxed. His arm was draped over the back of the seat. He looked calm. It was infuriating. How could he be so calm when her entire life had just been incinerated? "Rescued me from what?" she snapped. "From a bad date? From cheap wine? From yourself," he said. He looked at her. His eyes were dark in the shadows of the car. "You think you were hiding, Rynna? You were vibrating. You were a beacon. Any alpha in the city could have claimed you tonight. I got there first." Rynna laughed. It was a sharp, brittle sound. "Claimed me?" she asked. "I am not land. I am not property. I left the pack life, Torvak. I chose to be nobody. You can choose to be a vegan," he said dryly. "But you are still a wolf." She hated him. She hated that he was right. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't scrub the wolf out of her DNA. She had tried to be boring. She had tried to be safe. And look where it got her. In the back of the king's car, speeding toward the one place she never wanted to go. The territory. She looked out the window. The city lights blurred past. Rain streaked the glass like tears. "Where are you taking me?" she asked quietly. "Home," he said. "Your home," she corrected. "Not mine. For now," he said. "They are the same thing." She turned to look at him. "I will run. You know that, right? The first chance I get. I will run until my paws bleed." She expected him to get angry. She expected him to threaten her with guards or chains. Instead, he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who enjoyed the chase. "Good," he whispered. "I like a moving target." Her breath caught. Between one breath and the next, the tension in the car shifted. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was something else. Something hot and electric. Her skin tingled. Her wolf perked up, wagging its tail. "He wants to play," her wolf thought. "He wants to hunt us." "Shut up," Rynna told her wolf. She crossed her arms over her chest. She needed armor. She needed to protect herself from him. Because he wasn't just strong, he was magnetic. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. "I hate you," she said. "I know," he replied softly. "Use that." The car slowed down. They were approaching the gates. Iron bars, stone walls, armed guards. It was a fortress. It was a cage. And she was the newest exhibit.
The penthouse was silent. It was usually his sanctuary. It was clean lines, glass walls, and cold marble. It was devoid of life. It was devoid of mess. Torvak liked it that way. The chaos of the pack stayed downstairs. Up here, he could think. But tonight, the silence felt different. He opened the door and ushered Rynna inside. She stepped in like she was walking onto a battlefield. Her muscles were coiled. She scanned the room instantly, checking exits, checking windows, checking for weapons. She was tactical. He liked that. "Nice place," she said. Her voice dripped with sarcasm. "Very. Dictator chic." Torvak closed the door. The lock engaged with a heavy thud. "It's secure," he said. "Nobody can get in, and nobody can get out." He walked to the bar. He needed a drink. The adrenaline was still humming in his veins. Carrying her had been intoxicating. Feeling her fight him had woken up parts of him that had been asleep for years. He poured 2 glasses of amber whiskey. "Drink," he said, holding one out to her. She looked at the glass. Then she looked at him. "I don't want your drink," she said. "I want to go." "You can't go," he said simply. He took a sip. The burn was good. "You made a spectacle, Rynna. You challenged a king in public. If I let you walk out that door now, I look weak. And if I look weak, wolves die." He saw the realization hit her. Her eyes widened slightly. She wasn't stupid. She knew the laws. Power was a fragile thing. It had to be maintained. "So I'm what?" she asked. "A prisoner? A trophy?" "You are a guest," he said. "Until the heat dies down. Until they forget." "They won't forget," she said. "No," he agreed. "They won't." Because of that, he knew this was permanent. He just hadn't told her yet. He couldn't let her go. Not ever. She was too strong to be left alone, and she was too intoxicating. He walked toward the window. The city lay spread out below them, a grid of lights and shadows. It was his kingdom. And now she was standing in the center of it. "The guest bedroom is down the hall," he said, not turning around. "There are clothes in the closet. Burn that dress. It smells like human fear." He waited for her to argue. He waited for her to throw the glass at his head. Eventually, he heard her footsteps. She didn't walk away. She walked closer. He turned. She was standing 5 feet away. Her eyes were blazing. "I will not burn it," she said. "And I will not sleep." "Suit yourself," he said. "Why me?" she asked suddenly. Her voice cracked just a little. "Why did you stop? You were walking past. You didn't even look at me." Torvak looked at her. He looked at the pulse fluttering in her throat. "Because," he said, stepping closer, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. "You were the only thing in that room that felt real." The space between them burned. He wanted to touch her. He wanted to trace the line of her jaw. But he didn't. He had pushed her enough for one night. "Go to your room, Rynna," he commanded. "Before I forget that I'm a gentleman." She stared at him for a heartbeat longer. Then she turned and marched down the hall. He watched her go, and for the first time in a decade, the silence in his head was gone, replaced by her.
The dress had to die. It was tight. It was itchy. It was a suffocating layer of human that Rynna couldn't stand for one more second. She paced the room like a tiger in a cage. The carpet was too soft. The air was too still. She grabbed the hem of the black cocktail dress. With a low snarl, she ripped it. The sound of tearing fabric was satisfying. Rip, snap. She tore it up the thigh until she could actually move her legs. She kicked off her heels and watched them hit the wall with a dull thud. Better. Now she could fight. Now she could run. She walked to the window. The glass was thick. Bulletproof, probably. She pressed her hand against it. The city was miles below. "Jump and die," she whispered to herself. "Or stay and—" She didn't finish the sentence. Stay and what? Become his pet? Become the thing she ran away from? Her stomach growled. It was a loud, demanding sound. On the table, there was a silver tray. A steak, rare, bloody. It smelled like iron and life. She had ignored it for an hour out of spite. She wanted to starve. She wanted to be stubborn, but her wolf was scratching at her ribs. Eat, it commanded. We need strength. Because of that, she walked to the table. She didn't use the fork. She didn't use the knife. She picked up the meat with her bare fingers. The juice ran down her hand. She took a bite. It was cold, but it was perfect. The flavor exploded on her tongue. She closed her eyes and let out a sigh that was half moan, half growl. She had been eating salads and sandwiches for 3 years. She had forgotten what it felt like to be full, to be fueled. She finished it in 3 bites. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. She felt stronger. The room didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt like a waiting room. She started to pace again. What was he doing? Was he laughing at her? Was he guarding the door? She walked to the heavy oak door. She pressed her ear against it. Silence. No, not silence. If she held her breath, she could hear voices downstairs. Deep voices, angry voices. Politics, she thought bitterly. Men measuring their egos. She backed away from the door. She wasn't going to wait for him to decide her fate. She looked around the room. There had to be a way out. A vent, a service elevator, something. She began to search. She pulled books off the shelves. She checked behind the paintings. Nothing. She was sealed in. Fine, she hissed. You want to keep me? Then you better be ready to bleed. She grabbed a heavy bronze statue from the mantel. It was cold in her hand. A weapon. She sat in the armchair facing the door. She wouldn't sleep. She wouldn't blink. When he came back, she would be ready. But then, a sound cut through the night. It wasn't at the door. It was at the balcony. A scrape. Metal on stone. Rynna froze. Her heart skipped a beat. We were 40 floors up. Nothing could be on the balcony. Unless it wasn't human. She stood up slowly, gripping the statue. The curtains shifted. Something was out there.
You cannot keep her. The elder's voice was dry, like dead leaves. Torvak didn't look up from his desk. He was signing papers, death warrants, trade agreements, boring things. I can do whatever I want, Torvak said. I am the king. You are the king by law, the elder said, slamming his hand on the wood. And the law says a female must be claimed properly. You dragged a stray out of a human bar. It looks messy, Torvak. It looks desperate. Torvak stopped writing. He looked up. His eyes were flat and gold. Desperate? He repeated softly. The elder swallowed. He took a step back. I only mean, Varric is talking. He says you are breaking tradition. He says the female is fair game because she has no mark. Varric. The name tasted like ash. Varric was a young alpha from the south. He was loud. He was ambitious. And he was stupid. Let him talk, Torvak said. If he wants to challenge me, let him come. He is coming, the elder warned. Tonight. Torvak felt a ripple of anticipation. Good. He needed to hit something. Get out, Torvak said. The elder bowed stiffly and left. As soon as the door closed, Torvak turned his chair. He looked at the wall of screens. Security feeds, the perimeter, the hallway, and the guest room. He watched her. Rynna. She was sitting in the armchair facing the door. She was holding a bronze statue like a club. Her dress was ripped. Her hair was wild. She looked like a goddess of war waiting for a sacrifice. Torvak felt a pull in his chest so strong it hurt. He should be angry. She was destroying his property. She was planning to attack him. Instead, he smiled. That's it, he thought. Don't give an inch. He zoomed in on her face. Her eyes were wide. Her nostrils were flaring. She was tracking something. Wait. She wasn't looking at the door. She was looking at the window. Torvak frowned. The balcony was secure. It was a sheer drop. No human could climb it, but a wolf could. A wolf with claws and a death wish. His blood went cold. Varric, he didn't just talk. He sent a scout. Torvak stood up so fast his chair crashed backward. No, he growled. He didn't run. He blurred. He moved through the office and into the hallway. He didn't bother with the elevator. He took the stairs, jumping entire flights at a time. His wolf was roaring in his head. Mine, mine, protect. If they touched her, if they even looked at her. He slammed into the corridor leading to her room. He could smell it now. The scent of an intruder, musky and sour. Rynna, he roared. He reached the door. He didn't use the key. He kicked it. The wood splintered, and the lock shattered. He burst into the room, ready to kill. But what he saw made him stop dead in his tracks.
The glass shattered inward. It exploded like a bomb. Shards of safety glass sprayed across the carpet. Rynna didn't scream. She didn't flinch. Move, her instincts screamed. She dove to the right just as a dark shape lunged through the broken window. It was a man, or something like a man. He was shifting midair, his bones cracking and reshaping. He was halfway between human and wolf, a monstrous thing with claws and fur patches. He landed on the rug with a wet thud. He snarled, saliva dripping from his jaws. Varric sends his regards, the creature hissed. He lunged. He was fast, but Rynna was desperate. She didn't try to run for the door. She swung the bronze statue. Crack. She connected with his ribs. It was a solid hit. The intruder howled in pain and stumbled sideways. You picked the wrong room, Rynna panted. She didn't wait for him to recover. She was smaller, but she was angry. She used the momentum. She kicked out, aiming for his knee. The intruder went down, but he grabbed her ankle. His claws dug into her skin. Pain flared, hot and sharp. Rynna gasped. She fell backward. He was crawling on top of her, his teeth snapping inches from her throat. He smelled like rot. Pretty little stray, he growled. I'm going to bleed you dry. No, she wasn't going to die here. Not like this. She reached out. Her hand found a shard of glass from the broken window. It was long and jagged. With a scream of pure rage, she drove it into his shoulder. He roared and recoiled, letting her go. Rynna scrambled back. She got to her feet, breathing hard. Blood dripped from her ankle. Blood coated her hand. Get up, she dared him. Come on. The intruder looked at her. He looked at the glass in her hand. He looked afraid. In that moment, the bedroom door exploded inward. Splinters of wood flew everywhere. Torvak stood in the doorway. He looked like a nightmare. His eyes were glowing so bright they lit up the room. His teeth were bared. His hands were curled into claws. Mine! He roared. The sound shook the walls. The intruder scrambled back, whimpering. He realized too late that he was trapped between a furious female and the Alpha King. Torvak didn't ask questions. He didn't hesitate. He crossed the room in a blur. He grabbed the intruder by the throat and lifted him off the ground with one hand. You touched her, Torvak said. His voice was terrifyingly calm. Rynna watched, frozen. Torvak threw the man. He didn't just toss him, he launched him. The intruder flew across the room and smashed into the far wall, crumbling like a broken doll. Silence fell. Torvak turned slowly. He looked at the broken window. He looked at the blood on the carpet. Then, he looked at Rynna. His gaze dropped to her bleeding ankle. The air in the room thickened. It became heavy and electric. You're bleeding, he said. I handled it, Rynna said. Her voice shook, but she held her chin high. I didn't need you. Torvak walked toward her. He stepped over the unconscious body of the attacker like it was trash. He stopped inches from her. He reached out. His hand hovered near her face. He was shaking. You fought, he whispered. He sounded amazed. You didn't hide. I am done hiding, Rynna said. He looked at her with something that wasn't just hunger. It was pride. Dark, possessive pride. "Good," he said, "because the war just started." He scooped her up into his arms. "Put me down," she protested weakly. "No," he said. "You're hurt, and I'm done being nice." He carried her out of the room, leaving the wreckage behind.
The bandage on her ankle was white, stark white against the obsidian floor of the corridor. Torvak watched Rynna walk. She wasn't limping. She refused to limp. Even with the claw marks from the intruder still knitting together, she moved with a predator's grace. "We are walking into a trap," Torvak said low. He adjusted his cuffs. He was back in the suit, the armor of the king, but beneath the silk, his skin felt too tight. The wolf was right at the surface, pushing against his ribs, demanding blood. "I know," Rynna said. She didn't look at him. She was staring at the massive double doors at the end of the hall. Varric called a parley. "A parley of claws," Torvak corrected. "It is an ancient excuse to gather an audience for an execution." He stopped walking. Without warning, he grabbed her arm. He didn't hurt her, but he forced her to face him. "Listen to me," he commanded. His voice was rough, gravel grinding on stone. "In that room, the law is the only thing keeping them from tearing us apart. Varric wants you to speak. He wants you to prove you are wild so he can claim I have broken the code by harboring a rogue." Rynna looked up at him. Her eyes were dark, unfathomable pools. "So what do I do?" she asked. "You stand behind me," Torvak said. He leaned in, his breath brushing her cheek. "You do not speak. You do not snarl. You become a shadow. I will handle Varric." It was a command. It was protection. But as he said it, he saw a flicker in her eyes. Not submission, annoyance. "I am not good at being a shadow," she whispered. "Tonight you are," he said. "Or we both bleed." He let her go. He turned to the guards, massive men with assault rifles who looked like children compared to the monsters they served. "Open it," Torvak ordered. The doors groaned open. The sound that hit them was a wall of noise, growls, jeers, the heavy, wet sound of breathing. The great hall was packed. Every alpha from the city was there. And in the center, standing on the raised dais, was Varric. He was young. He was blonde. He was smiling like a man who had already won. To make things worse, Varric was wearing a white suit, a mockery of purity. Torvak stepped across the threshold. The room went silent. He felt the heavy, crushing weight of hundreds of eyes. He felt Rynna step into his shadow, just as he ordered. But he could feel her heat. She was a furnace at his back. "Stay down," he begged her silently. "For once in your life, stay down."
The smell was the first thing that hit her. It smelled like a locker room filled with rotting meat, testosterone, ego, musk. It was thick enough to taste on the back of her tongue. Rynna kept her head down, staring at the back of Torvak's jacket. He was a wall, a glorious, terrifying wall between her and the world. But she could feel the tension vibrating off him. He was holding back. He was restraining his power to play their game. "So," a voice drawled. It was oily and sharp. "The king brings his pet." Rynna's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "Don't speak," she reminded herself. "Be a shadow." She peeked around Torvak's arm. Varric was standing 10 feet away. He had a face that was handsome until you saw the eyes. They were dead, cruel. He looked at Torvak with mock pity. "She is not a pet," Torvak said. His voice was calm, but it carried to the back of the room. "She is under my protection." "Protection?" Varric laughed. He turned to the crowd, spreading his arms. "He calls it protection. I call it hoarding. She is unmarked. She is unclaimed. By the old laws, she belongs to the pack. She belongs to the strongest." The crowd rumbled in agreement, a low thrum of hungry noise. Varric took a step closer. He looked past Torvak. He looked right at Rynna. "Come here, little stray," Varric cooed. "Step away from him. Let's see if you're worth starting a war over. Or are you just a human whore playing dress-up?" The insult hung in the air like a slap. Rynna felt Torvak stiffen. His muscles bunched. He was going to snap. But if he attacked first, he broke the law. He would lose the support of the council. He was paralyzed by his own crown. In that moment, the world shifted. Rynna realized the truth. He wasn't protecting her. She was shackling him. As long as she hid behind him, he was weak. No more, she thought. Rynna, no, Torvak warned, low in his throat. She didn't listen. Instead, she stepped out. She didn't just step out. She strode forward until she was standing in front of the king. She was half Varric's size. She was wearing ripped clothes and a bandage. But she stood like a giant. The room gasped. She looked Varric dead in the eye. "You talk a lot," Rynna said. Her voice was clear, ringing like a bell in the silence. Varric blinked, surprised. "Excuse me? For an alpha, you talk a lot," she repeated. She tilted her head, sniffing the air loudly. "And you smell. Sour, like milk that's been left out in the sun." Someone in the back snickered. Varric's face went red. The vein in his neck bulged. "You dare speak to me?" Varric snarled. "You are nothing. You are an object to be traded." "I am not an object," Rynna said coldly. "And I am definitely not yours. If you want me, Varric, come and take me. But I warn you." She smiled. It was a wolf's smile. All teeth. "I bite."
The air in the great hall shattered. Torvak watched it happen in slow motion. He saw the humiliation hit Varric like a physical blow. He saw the moment Varric's rationality snapped. The rival alpha didn't care about the law anymore. He didn't care about the audience. He only wanted to silence the woman who had just gelded him verbally in front of the court. "Die!" Varric roared. Varric lunged. As he moved, his body contorted. Bones cracked audibly, his face elongated. Fur burst through the white suit. He was shifting mid-air, turning into a massive gray wolf with jaws aimed straight for Rynna's throat. Rynna didn't flinch. She stood her ground, but she didn't have to fight, because she had a king. Without thinking, Torvak moved. He didn't shift fully. He didn't need to. He let the partial shift take him, claws extending to 3 inches of razor-sharp bone, his eyes burning into twin suns. He intercepted Varric's lunge with his own body. Crunch! They collided in midair with the force of 2 freight trains. Torvak slammed Varric into the stone floor. The impact was so hard it cracked the foundation. Dust rose in a choking cloud. "You wanted a war?" Torvak roared into Varric's face. He didn't wait for an answer. He buried his claws in Varric's shoulder and ripped. Varric howled, a sound of pure agony. Blood sprayed, hot and metallic, painting the floor crimson. Torvak stood up, dragging Varric up with him by the throat. He slammed the rival alpha back down. Thud. Again. Thud. Again. Thud. He was brutal. He was efficient. He was the monster they all feared. "She speaks," Torvak snarled to the room, his voice booming like thunder. "Whenever she damn well pleases." He threw Varric across the dais. The broken alpha slid to a stop at Rynna's feet. Torvak turned to the crowd. He was breathing hard. His hands were dripping red. "Anyone else?" he challenged. The hall was silent, deathly silent. But then, the doors burst open again. Not guards, wolves. Varric's pack, dozens of them. They poured in, shifting as they ran, eyes glowing with hate. It wasn't a duel anymore. It was a massacre.
The room exploded. It wasn't a figure of speech. It was a physical detonation of bodies and fur. Varric's pack didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like starving dogs. Without warning, a wall of gray fur slammed into Rynna. She hit the stone floor hard. The air left her lungs in a painful whoosh. A wolf, a beta, with yellow eyes and drool stringing from his jaws, was on top of her instantly. His claws tore at her shirt. He smelled like sulfur and bad decisions. "Die, stray!" he snarled. Rynna didn't scream. In fact, she didn't even panic. Her human brain shut down. The part of her that worried about rent and data entry vanished. In its place, something ancient woke up. Kill, her wolf whispered. She didn't shift fully. She didn't have time. Instead, she let the wolf take her eyes and her speed. As if pulled by a string, her leg snapped up. She drove her heel into the beta's soft underbelly. It was a kick that would have dented a car door. The wolf yelped and doubled over. Rynna scrambled backward. She grabbed a heavy silver candelabra from a fallen table. "Come on!" she yelled. The beta lunged again. She swung the silver, heavy and hard. Crack! It connected with his snout. Bone crunched. The wolf dropped like a sack of cement. Rynna stood up. She was breathing hard. Her hair was in her face. There was blood on her hands. It wasn't hers. She looked across the room. Torvak was a blur of violence. He was fighting 3 alphas at once. He moved like water fluid and unstoppable. He ripped a throat out with one hand while breaking an arm with the other. He was a monster. And he was beautiful. What's worse was that she liked it. She felt a pull in her chest, a burning tether that connected her to him. Just then, another wolf flanked her. "Watch out!" Torvak roared from across the room. He saw her. Even in the chaos, he was watching her. Because of that, Rynna didn't freeze. She ducked. Claws raked the air where her head had been a second ago. She spun around. She didn't have a weapon now. So, she used her teeth. She grabbed the attacker's arm and bit down. Hard. Her canines extended just enough to puncture muscle. The attacker screamed. She shoved him away and kicked him in the knee. She stood alone in a circle of unconscious bodies. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the prey. She was the predator.
Torvak felt she was safe. He felt it through the bond that hadn't even been sealed yet. She was fighting. She was winning. That knowledge set him free. He didn't have to worry about her, which meant he could focus on them. He grabbed a wolf by the scruff of the neck and threw him into a pillar. The sound of breaking stone was music to his ears. "Enough," Torvak bellowed. His voice carried the alpha command. It hit the room like a shock wave. The lesser wolves stumbled. Their instincts forced them to hesitate, but Varric was still moving. The rival alpha was bleeding from the shoulder where Torvak had mauled him earlier, but he was stupid with rage. He was crawling toward Rynna. He wanted to hurt her, to hurt the king. Torvak saw red. In a single heartbeat, the world shifted. He didn't run. He teleported. He crossed the distance between them in a blur of black motion. He landed on Varric's back. He slammed the rival face first into the floor. "You," Torvak growled. "Do not learn." Varric tried to snap at him. Torvak grabbed Varric's jaw. He forced the wolf's head up, exposing the throat. It was the ultimate position of submission. "Yield," Torvak ordered. "Never," Varric gargled. "She is." Unclaimed. Torvak tightened his grip. "She is mine," Torvak said. "And if you look at her again, I will take your eyes. If you speak her name, I will take your tongue." He applied pressure, just enough to let Varric know that death was a millimeter away. Varric whimpered. The fight went out of him. His body went limp. "I yield," Varric choked out. Torvak stood up. He dragged Varric up with him. He looked at the room. The fighting had stopped. Varric's pack was shrinking back, whimpering, seeing their leader broken. Torvak walked to the center of the room, dragging the defeated alpha. He stopped in front of Rynna. She was covered in dust and sweat. She was holding a bent candelabra. She looked magnificent. Torvak threw Varric at her feet. "He is yours," Torvak said to her. "Do you want his life?" The room held its breath. Torvak waited. He needed to know. Was she still the girl who wanted to be human? Or was she the queen who could make the hard call?
The silence was louder than the screaming. Rynna looked down at Varric. He was a mess of blood and white suit. He looked up at her with terror. He wasn't an alpha anymore. He was just a bully who got punched in the mouth. "Do you want his life?" Torvak had asked. It was a test. Rynna felt the weight of the candelabra in her hand. She could end him. It would be easy. Her blood was singing for it. Finish it, her instincts screamed. But then, she looked at the court. They were watching her. They were waiting to see if she was a monster. She took a deep breath. She let the wolf recede just a little. No, Rynna said. Her voice was steady. She looked at Torvak. He isn't worth the stain on the carpet, she said. Torvak's eyes flashed. A corner of his mouth ticked up. Leave, Rynna ordered Varric, and tell your friends that the next time you come for me, bring a bigger pack. Varric scrambled up. He didn't look back. He ran. His pack followed him, tails tucked between their legs. Eventually, the doors closed. The adrenaline began to fade, and when it did, the pain hit. Rynna felt the bruises forming. Her hands were shaking. She dropped the candelabra. Clang. Are you hurt? Torvak asked. He was suddenly there. He didn't touch her yet. He was hovering, scanning her for wounds. I'm fine, she said. But she wasn't fine. She looked at her hands. They were steady now. She looked at the room. She had fought. She had almost killed. And she hadn't been afraid. I can't go back, she whispered. It wasn't a question. It was a realization. She couldn't go back to the data entry job. She couldn't go back to Dave. She had tasted power. She had tasted blood. No, Torvak said softly. You can't. He reached out and took her hand. His skin was hot, rough. You belong here, Rynna, he said. You saw it. They saw it. She looked up at him. I didn't want this, she said. I wanted to be normal. Normal is a lie, he said. This is real. He pulled her closer. And you were perfect. Her chest ached. Not from the fight, but from the way he looked at her, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. As the truth unraveled, she realized something terrifying. She didn't want to run anymore. She wanted to stay, and she let it happen. She leaned into him, letting his strength hold her up as the reality of what she had done crashed down around them.
The great hall smelled of bleach and iron. Torvak stood by the window, watching the cleaning crew scrub Varric's blood off the stone. It should have felt like a victory. He had crushed the challenger. He had defended his territory. Yet, the knot in his stomach was tighter than ever. It is not enough. Torvak turned. The High Elder stood there, leaning on his cane. He looked like a dried apple, but his eyes were sharp as flint. I broke him, Torvak said. He yielded. He yielded to your fist, the Elder corrected. Not to your right. The Elder walked closer. You know the law, Torvak. Lex lupus. A female who fights in the circle must be claimed or killed. There is no middle ground. She is not a civilian anymore. She is a combatant. Torvak growled. The sound vibrated deep in his chest. She is under my protection. Protection is temporary, the Elder snapped. Claiming is permanent. As long as her neck is unmarked, she is open season. Varric is gone, but others will come. They will come for her to get to you. They will hunt her in the streets. They will hunt her in her sleep. Torvak looked back at the window. He imagined Rynna running. He imagined her trying to hide in her beige apartment. It wouldn't work. Not anymore. She shone too bright. In that moment, he realized the trap. He had saved her from the bar only to put a target on her back. She wants to be free, Torvak said quietly. Freedom is a myth for our kind, the Elder said. We are bound by blood and bone. She has a choice, King. She can be a rogue, running until she is caught and broken, or she can be a queen. The Elder paused. But you have to bite her. You have to bind her soul to yours. Tonight, Torvak closed his eyes. He didn't want to force her. He wanted her to choose him. But if he let her choose freedom, he was choosing her death. Get out, Torvak whispered. The Elder left. Torvak was alone with the silence. It pressed against his ears. He looked at his hands. They were clean now, but he could still feel the violence. He had to go to her. He had to tell her that the victory was a lie. He had to destroy her dream to save her life.
The water in the shower turned pink. Rynna watched it swirl down the drain, carrying away the dust and the dried blood. She scrubbed her skin until it was raw. She wanted to wash away the feeling of the wolf's jaws snapping at her throat, but she couldn't wash away the thrill. That was the terrifying part. She had liked it. When she held that candelabra, when she kicked that wolf, she had felt awake. She turned off the water. She wrapped herself in a thick white robe. It was soft, too soft. It belonged to a luxury hotel, not a warrior. She walked out into the bedroom. Torvak was there. He was standing by the fireplace, staring into the flames. He had changed his ruined suit for a black shirt and tactical pants. He looked tired. He looked like a statue carved from grief. "We won," Rynna said. She tried to sound brave. Torvak turned. He didn't smile. "Did we?" he asked. The air in the room grew heavy. "Varric ran," she said. The pack saw it. "Varric is a symptom," Torvak said. "The disease is the law." He walked toward her. He stopped a few feet away, respecting her space, but his eyes were intense, burning gold. "You fought in the circle, Rynna. You drew blood. By the ancient laws, that makes you a challenger. You aren't a human civilian anymore. You are a wolf player." Rynna felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. "So?" she asked. "I can fight." "Can you fight an army?" he asked softly. "Because that is what is coming. Every rogue, every ambitious beta, every alpha who wants my throne. They will see you as the weak link. They will hunt you, not to keep you, to kill you." The room spun. "I'll leave," she said. "I'll go to another city. I'll change my name again." "It won't work," he said. "Because you have been seen. Your scent is known." He took a step closer. "There is no normal life waiting for you, Rynna. That door is closed. It was locked the moment you stepped in front of me." Rynna backed up until her legs hit the bed. She sat down hard. She thought of Dave. She thought of her data entry job. It all seemed so distant now, like a movie she saw once. "So I'm dead," she whispered. "That's what you're saying." "No," Torvak said. "I'm saying you have two choices." He knelt in front of her. For a king to kneel, it was shocking. "You walk out that door, and you take your chances as a rogue. I will give you money. I will give you a head start. But I cannot protect you once you cross the boundary." He paused. He took a breath. "Or," he said, his voice rough, "you stay." "As a guest?" she asked, hope rising in her chest. "No," he said, "as a mate."
The word hung in the air between them. Mate. It was a heavy word. It meant more than marriage. It meant a psychic bond. It meant sharing pain, sharing strength, sharing souls. It was irrevocable. Torvak watched her face. He saw the shock. He saw the fear. "I don't want to own you," Torvak said quickly. "I want to bind you to the pack. If I mark you, if I bite you, you become queen. You become untouchable. No one can hurt you without challenging me to a death match." "You want to bite me," she said flatly. "I want you to live," he countered. He reached out but didn't touch her. He let his hand hover palm up. "An offering. I won't force it, Rynna. I took you from the bar, but I will not take this. This has to be yours." Internal conflict raged inside him. Every instinct he had was screaming, "Just do it. Mark her. Keep her." His wolf wanted to pin her down and bite her neck right now to secure her safety. But he knew Rynna. If he forced her, she would hate him forever. She would be safe, but she would be a prisoner in her own skin. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was small. "Why would you bind yourself to me? I'm trouble. I'm stubborn. I just started a war." Torvak let out a short, dry laugh. "Because," he said, looking her in the eyes, "you are the only one who has ever stood in front of me instead of behind me." He stood up. He walked to the door. He unlocked it. He opened it wide. The hallway was empty. The elevator was waiting. "The car is downstairs," he said. He didn't look at her. He couldn't. If he looked at her, he would bar the door. "Kale will drive you anywhere you want to go." The airport, the train station, anywhere. He waited. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. This was the gamble, the biggest gamble of his life. "Choose, Rynna," he whispered. The silence stretched. It felt like minutes. It felt like hours. He heard the rustle of fabric. He heard her stand up. She walked toward him. He braced himself. He expected her to walk past him. He expected the scent of her to fade as she left his life forever. But she didn't walk past. She stopped. She stood right in front of him, blocking the open door. "Close it," she said.
The lock clicked. It was a small sound, but it echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. Torvak stood with his hand on the door handle, his chest heaving as if he had just run a marathon. He looked at her with wild disbelief. "You stayed," he breathed. "I stayed," Rynna confirmed. She didn't know what scared her more, the fact that she was giving up her freedom, or the fact that she didn't want it anymore. Freedom had been cold. It had been lonely. Standing here in the heat of his gaze, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. She walked toward him. Her bare feet sank into the plush carpet. With every step she took, she shed a layer of the human disguise she had worn for so long. "Do it," she whispered. Torvak didn't move. He looked at her throat, where the pulse fluttered like a trapped moth. "If I do this," he warned, his voice rough, "there is no undoing it. You will feel me in your head. You will feel the pack. You will never be alone again." "I don't want to be alone," Rynna said. She reached up and touched his face. His skin was burning. His stubble grazed her palm. "Claim me, Torvak. Make them afraid to touch me." Something inside him snapped. Without warning, he grabbed her. One arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against his hard body. The other hand tangled in her hair, tilting her head back to expose the curve of her neck. The air in the room thickened. It smelled of ozone and arousal. "Mine," he growled. He lowered his head. His lips brushed the sensitive skin over her jugular. Rynna shivered. Then, he bit down. It wasn't gentle. It was primal. His teeth sank into her flesh, piercing the vein. Pain flared. Hot and white, a lightning strike to her nervous system. Rynna gasped, her nails digging into his shoulders. But then, the pain changed. As the bond pulsed, the agony dissolved into pure, liquid fire. It wasn't just blood connecting them. It was magic. It was soul. Rynna felt the walls of her mind come crashing down. Suddenly, he was there. She could feel his immense strength, his protective rage, his deep, terrifying love. It flooded her empty spaces, filling her up until she felt like she was glowing. Her legs gave out. He caught her. He held her tight, drinking her in, binding her to him with blood and ancient law, and she let it happen. She didn't fight. She surrendered to the power, letting it rewrite her DNA. She wasn't just Rynna the Stray anymore. She was Rynna the Queen. When he finally pulled back, his mouth was stained with her blood. His eyes were glowing so bright they looked like molten gold. "It is done," he rasped. Rynna touched the wound. It didn't hurt. It hummed. She looked up at him, and for the first time, she didn't see a king. She saw her other half. "Good," she said, her voice steady and full of new power. "Now let's go finish this."
The silence in his head was gone. For years, Torvak had lived with the pack mind, a chaotic radio static of thousands of wolves needing his leadership. It was a burden that usually crushed him. But now there was a melody in the static. Rynna. He could feel her right there, in the center of his chest. She was a grounding rod. She was absorbing the excess noise, filtering it, making it bearable. He grabbed a towel and gently pressed it to her neck. "I hurt you," he murmured. The guilt was a sharp pang. "You gave me armor," she corrected. She pulled his hand away and looked at the blood on the towel. She didn't look faint. She looked fierce. Her eyes had changed. There were flecks of gold in her irises now, mirroring his own. "We have to go back down there," Rynna said. Don't we? Yes, Torvak said. The court is waiting. They need to see the mark. He walked to the closet. He needed to cover the blood on his shirt, but he wanted everyone to see the blood on his mouth. Let them know he was a predator. He pulled out a fresh jacket for himself and a silk gown for her. It was silver, the color of moonlight. Wear this, he said. Rynna took the dress. She held it up. It's a bit formal, she noted. It's a statement, he said. You aren't the girl in the ripped bar dress anymore. You are the matriarch. She nodded. She dropped her robe without shame, standing naked and glorious in the firelight. Torvak's breath caught. She was muscle and curve and scar. She dressed quickly. The silver silk flowed over her body like water. It left her neck bare. The mark, the angry red bite, was visible for the world to see. A beat later, she turned to him. How do I look? She asked. Like war, Torvak said honestly. Beautiful war. He offered her his arm. Are you ready? Rynna took his arm. Her grip was firm. Through the bond, he felt her nerves, but he also felt her steel. I'm ready, she said. In that moment, the world shifted for him. He wasn't walking into the hall alone to defend his throne. He was walking in with his partner. Then let them look, Torvak said. He led her to the door. Downstairs, the sharks were circling. Varric might be gone, but the council was waiting. They wanted to see if the king had broken the law. They were about to find out that the king hadn't broken the law. He had rewritten it.
The elevator ride was too short. Rynna watched the numbers count down. 40, 30, 20. With every floor, her heart beat a little faster. But it wasn't the frantic panic of the bar. It was the heavy, powerful drum of a war march. She felt Torvak's mind brush against hers. Steady, he thought. I'm fine, she projected back. I just want to get this over with. The elevator stopped at the ground floor. The doors slid open. The hallway leading to the great hall was lined with guards. They snapped to attention as Torvak stepped out, but then their eyes slid to Rynna. They saw the mark on her neck. Immediately, heads lowered. They smelled the change. She wasn't a guest. She smelled like the king. Keep your head up, Torvak whispered. Always, she replied. They reached the massive double doors of the great hall. The last time she was here, she was a prisoner. She was a pawn. Not anymore. The doors groaned open. The conversation inside died instantly. Hundreds of faces turned toward them. The elders, the visiting alphas, the remnants of Varric's pack who were still cowering in the corners. Rynna didn't flinch. She walked beside Torvak, matching his stride. She let her gaze sweep the room. She looked them in the eyes, daring them to challenge her. No one spoke. The air thickened with the scent of awe. They saw the bite. It was undeniable. It was a fresh, raw claim that shouted, "Touch her and die." They walked to the dais. Torvak didn't sit on the throne. He stood in front of it and pulled Rynna to stand beside him. You asked for the law, Torvak's voice boomed, filling the cavernous space. Here is the law. He gestured to Rynna. She is mated. She is marked. She is queen. He looked at the High Elder, who was standing in the front row looking pale. Does anyone dispute the claim? Torvak challenged. Does anyone wish to test the strength of the bond? Silence stretched. It was absolute. Then, slowly, the High Elder went to one knee. Long live the queen, the elder rasped. It started a ripple. One by one, the alphas knelt. The guards knelt. Even the wolves from Varric's pack bowed their heads to the floor, pressing their noses to the stone in submission. Rynna looked out at the sea of bowed heads. She felt the power of the pack flow into her. It was heavy. It was intoxicating. She squeezed Torvak's hand. We did it, she thought. We have only just begun, his voice answered in her mind. But then, she saw Varric. He was in the back, huddled against a pillar, nursing his broken arm. He wasn't kneeling. He was watching her with eyes full of hate. Rynna narrowed her eyes. Not everyone is kneeling, she said aloud. Her voice carried. Varric froze. Torvak looked where she was looking. A low growl started in his chest. "He will learn," Torvak said, "or he will die." But Rynna shook her head. "No," she said. "He won't die today." She stepped forward, away from Torvak's protection. "Varric," she called out. The broken alpha flinched. "Kneel," she commanded. It wasn't a request. She pushed her will, her new alpha will, into the word. Varric fought it. She could see his muscles trembling, but the power of the queen was too much. Slowly, painfully, Varric dropped to his knees. The hall let out a collective breath. Rynna turned back to Torvak. He was looking at her with a smile that could set the world on fire. She had arrived.
The elevator doors closed, shutting out the world. Torvak leaned his head back against the cool metal wall. The adrenaline was leaving his system. It drained out of him like water, leaving a heavy, aching exhaustion in its wake. But it was a good ache. He looked at Rynna. She was standing next to him, still wearing the silver dress that looked like liquid moonlight. She was trembling slightly. Not from fear, he realized. From the crash. "Come here," he murmured. He pulled her into him. She didn't resist. She melted against his chest, burying her face in the crook of his neck. He could feel her breathing. He could feel the steady, strong beat of her heart against his own. In the quiet that followed, the elevator rose silently to the penthouse. When the doors opened, he didn't let her walk. He swept her up into his arms, carrying her across the threshold of his sanctuary. "You can put me down," she mumbled against his shirt. "I have legs." "I know," Torvak said. "I just don't want to use them right now." He carried her to the bedroom. The fire was dying down, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. He set her down on the edge of the massive bed. He knelt before her. He reached out and touched the mark on her neck. It was angry and red, but it was already healing. The wolf blood was potent. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "It throbs," she admitted, "like a second heartbeat." Torvak looked into her eyes. The gold flecks were swirling, mesmerizing. "I didn't do it just to save you," he confessed. His voice was low, rough with emotion. "I told myself it was for your protection." That was a lie. Rynna tilted her head. "Why then?" "Because," he said, "when you walked into that bar, when I smelled you." The silence in my head finally stopped. "I claimed you because I couldn't breathe without you." Her breath hitched. She reached out and tangled her fingers in his hair. "Then breathe," she whispered. She pulled him up. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was a collision. It was two storms meeting in the middle of the ocean. Torvak groaned, a low animal sound in his throat. He kissed her with all the hunger he had suppressed for a decade. He felt the bond flare to life between them. It was a bridge of light and fire. He could feel her desire, her relief, her fierce, possessive love. It was overwhelming. It was perfect. He pushed her back onto the mattress, following her down. The silver dress pooled around them. "Mine," he growled against her skin. "Yours," she answered, "always." And he let it happen. He let the walls of the king crumble, leaving only the man and the wolf who finally had a home.
Come morning, the sunlight was blinding. Rynna blinked awake. For a second, she didn't know where she was. The sheets were too high thread count. The air smelled too expensive. Then she moved, and her body reminded her. Every muscle ached. It was a good ache, the kind that came from fighting a war and winning. She turned her head. The other side of the bed was empty. The sheets were cold. Panic flared in her chest. A sharp, sudden spike. He left. It was a mistake. But then, she felt it. The tether. It was a warm, humming line in the back of her mind. She reached out with her thoughts, and she felt him. He wasn't gone. He was close. "Coffee," his voice whispered in her head. "I'm making coffee." Rynna let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She sat up. She walked to the full-length mirror in the corner of the room. She looked at herself. Her hair was a disaster. There were bruises blooming on her arms from the fight, and there, on her neck, was the bite. It was a scar now, a jagged circle of raised pink flesh. It should have looked ugly. Instead, Rynna smiled. It looked like a crown. She turned away from the mirror and saw her purse sitting on the chair. Her old purse, the cheap leather one she bought at a discount store. She opened it and took out her phone. There were 3 missed texts from Dave. Dave, hey, that guy was crazy. Are you okay? Dave, did you call the cops? Dave, Rynna? Rynna looked at the messages. They felt like they were written in a foreign language. They belonged to a girl who was afraid of loud noises, a girl who drank bad wine and pretended to be beige. Goodbye, Dave, she whispered. She didn't just delete the thread. She deleted the contact. Then she powered off the phone and tossed it into the trash can. The door opened. Torvak walked in. He was holding 2 mugs. He was shirtless, wearing only low-slung sweatpants. The morning light caught the scars on his chest. He stopped when he saw her. His eyes went to the trash can, then to her face. He smiled. Hungry? He asked. Starving, she said. He handed her the mug. Their fingers brushed, and a spark of static electricity jumped between them. The council is asking for a meeting at noon, he said casually, taking a sip of his coffee. They want to discuss the restructuring of the Southern Territories now that Varric is indisposed. Rynna took a sip. It was black, strong. Restructuring? She asked. Is that code for divvying up the spoils? Essentially, Torvak said. I thought you might want to be there, since you're the one who made him kneel. Rynna walked over to him. She placed a hand on his bare chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heart. I wouldn't miss it for the world, she said.
The city looked different from up here. Torvak stood on the balcony, his hands resting on the cold railing. Before, the city had been a grid of problems, a map of threats. Now, it looked like a kingdom. He felt Rynna step up beside him. She was wearing one of his shirts. It swallowed her frame, hanging down to her thighs. She looked ridiculous. She looked perfect. It's a long way down, she noted, looking over the edge. It is, Torvak agreed. That's why we don't fall. He looked at her. The wind whipped her dark hair across her face. Do you regret it? He asked. The quiet life? The safety? Rynna laughed. It was a low, throaty sound. Safety was a cage, Torvak. I thought freedom meant running away from what I was. I thought if I ignored the wolf, I could be happy. She turned to face him, leaning her back against the railing. But I realized something last night. When I was standing in that hall, when I was holding that candelabra, yes, I realized that freedom isn't running, she said. Freedom is having the power to stand your ground and tell the world to move. Torvak smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. Then we are going to be very free, he said. He reached out and took her hand. Her palm was rough against his. They were 2 predators, standing at the top of the food chain. Varric won't be the last, Torvak warned. Now that you are queen, others will test you. They will try to find a crack in the armor. Let them come, Rynna said softly. Her eyes flashed gold. I'm not hiding anymore. Torvak pulled her closer. No, he said. We hunt. He looked out at the horizon. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. The city was waking up. The wolves were waking up. They would hear the news soon. The king had taken a mate. The stray had become the queen. The game had changed. And for the first time in his life, Torvak was looking forward to playing it. He squeezed Rynna's hand. Ready? He asked through the bond. Always, she answered. Together, they turned back toward the glass doors, ready to rule.